Hi, my name is Israel Vasquetelle, and welcome to The Turntable, a roundtable discussion featuring entertainment and music industry students, artists, and anyone with a vested interest in the music industry. And today we have a special guest, Ray Acevedo. And Ray, you got your start many years ago in a very iconic band, globally known, called Menudo. So here we are all these years later, and you know, whether we're talking to someone that, you know, grew up with Menudo or someone that maybe heard about them through their parents, they still know the band. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate the time, and to all the public roundtable, thank you for listening. You know, Menudo was huge. You know, it was one of the, if not the first boy band out there. I think before that it was the Jackson 5 that, you know, that started that trend of, like, you know, 5 members playing at the same time, and obviously, you know, the Temptations and all those groups before, but like Menudo, you know, it was like unique. And I did 200,000 people in a show in Brazil with Menudo. So Menudo is, you know, long lasting, you know, a big impact on the music, on the aesthetic of artists, you know, of that time. You know, we had it was like a big dent in the music of the 80s that Menudo did, and I think that's why it's been so lasting, you know, the impact that we have. I mean, I'm not recognized, obviously, sometimes. It's been many years, but every time that the name Menudo is brought to the table, you know, it's something where people, like, you know, either love it, you know, they understand it, they've been there, and it's, you know, like you said, it's long lasting.
Indeed, not only impactful as pop culture, but also culture in general.
In general,
you know, so it's also interesting that we're talking about, you know, Spanish language music that resonated with folks maybe that weren't necessarily speakers of, or at least not primary speakers of Spanish. And I noticed on your recent album or your recent video, you have a version in English and Spanish for a song. And I was curious, were you doing that specifically to reach those folks that maybe had English or Spanish as a primary language?
Yes, that's basically the main idea behind it. I mean, you know, not only when I was in the group Menudo, but, you know, my culture, I'm Puerto Rican, and, you know, we are very influenced by United States, you know, by the music of United States. You know, we have over there the top 40s, we have stations that only play English, you know, music, American music, you know. And that influenced me a lot, and I think all of the artists, you know, that have come from my generation and from Puerto Rico, they're very influenced by the English speaking. So they, you know, we usually have that tendency of, like, you know, doing, or I like to do it, you know, Spanish and English, because I do think that I have fans that, you know, don't speak any Spanish. And, you know, it's interesting because, you know, we were talking about it before, and everything is sort of changing, you know, it's just meshing around. And, you know, the barriers or the cultures are being crossed, you know, the lines are being crossed culturally in that sense right now. So that's why you know, I use, I also, you know, have some songs that are in Portuguese too. So
you're trilingual.
I'm trilingual, yeah.
All right. So I'm curious, as far as our panelists are concerned, you know, have you come across music that isn't in English? However, it still appeals to you, still calls to you, still find yourself, you know, going back.
Just the other day, I made friends with a Circle K cashier named Ashley. She's very nice, and she made me a K-pop mixtape. And I actually grew up, well, I didn't grow up, but I lived in Bayside, Queens for the last couple of years, and that's a completely Korean neighborhood. So I had a lot of access to this other type of music. And I would definitely say that K-pop is big here in the States. Big enough that I made friends with a stranger, and they, you know, they made me a CD. Right. And the thing about K-pop is that, you know, I would say that most American K-pop listeners do not know Korean, as opposed to, like, maybe, like, you know, Spanglish acts where, you know, it's like they know Spanish from home, and so even though that might not be like their primary language, they still, like, have an attachment to it. I think most K-pop listeners in the States have no attachment to Korea.
I would say one of the biggest artists out here is actually from Florida, Miami, Pitbull. He does a lot of Spanish mixed with hip hop and whatever other kind of music you can put out. Jennifer Lopez is also another one that incorporates Spanish in her music.
Shakira as well. In the song Waka Waka in particular, everyone knows every lyric to that song. Half of it is English, half of it is Spanish, but everyone knows the Spanish part.
Exactly.
And if you see, I think that's the phenomenon of that, the Spanish and English, comes more obviously from Florida, Miami. I think, if you see all these artists, Enrique Iglesias from Spain and Shakira's from Colombia. However, their bases, where they make it is Miami. So it's like, you have this influence of Latin speaking, and it's easier for artists to be able to cross over into that. Even, not doing your own the language of the country. You can do Spanish, and people that don't speak, completely Spanish, will identify aesthetically with the artist or the music. So, but us, like you said, Jennifer Lopez, Pitbull, they have capitalized on their, Spanglish roots, and it's I think it's taking over. I think it's it's changing completely now.
Indeed, definitely.
And there's still precedent for it. You know what I mean? Just a big example is Psy Gangnam Style.
No,
that
right.
was #1 in this country, and that song was completely in Korean. It definitely boils down to is the music friendly to radios in that country, and is the branding consistent with radios in that country, or just audiences in that country?
My question is is that some type of music specifically? Is that happening? Do you see it happening more? Is it happening more?
I think that it's definitely the versatilities of the cultures in the United States.
Right. So it's a kind of a new phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, not that different cultures in the U.S. is new, but people are really realizing these are viable markets. They're not incidental ones. They're not just oh yeah, I guess there's people that listen to it. It's
right.
No, these are people that we can really capitalize off of. If there's an area in the United States that has no Latino people, maybe Latino music won't sell there. But if there's lots of hamlets and pockets where that exists.
But you get what we talked about. You get Justin Bieber doing a beat with reggaeton, and he's gonna sell in those areas.
Exactly.
But still has reggaeton on the bottom, and and people are accepting it.
So what's interesting is now we're also not only talking about different languages in the music, but we're also talking about the fact that we're bringing in different genres of music. Clearly, because reggaeton is not necessarily in line with what we're used to seeing a Justin Bieber perform. I remember years ago I had a friend who was one of the most amazing rappers. His name was Magic Juan, and he rapped in English, but he had this other project that was, you mentioned merengue hip hop, and that blew up. And that was, the name of the group was Proyecto Uno. So it's kind of interesting that maybe we could introduce people to new genres, through that cross-pollination. I'm thinking about baby metal. What do you guys think about?
Well, I'm thinking about,
I'm thinking
of, the first thing that comes to my mind that of an example of something that happened, I think more in the 90s. There was a total mix of rock and rap, and that was the first time I was like, oh man, it's in Living Color, I think it was called, one of the bands.
Living Color.
And then there was
Rage.
Rage Against the Machine.
Right, Limp Bizkit, Korn.
Right, and then they started doing all this rap and top, and and it was like a sort of crossover between the two, and it hit big. It had a
Linkin
big
Park.
Exactly, it had a big market. And I think that's what's happening a lot now with the Latin music or the tropical sounds, and tropical house, like you said, that is very popular, and all this pop artists, more than anything, because you're not gonna have Metallica sing something like that, of course, but it's interesting to see how it's mutating and it's getting there, and like you said, we're able to introduce the sounds and to people that probably never would have considered listening to that, just because it was in Spanish or it was in English.
Indeed. So in regard to your career, are you looking to do a little bit of that in regard to being able to maybe incorporate someone in your music that maybe brings that different genre or brings that different language, or are you planning on doing that on your own?
Well, excellent question for me, because I'm right in the middle of that I wouldn't call it a problem, you know, as a middle of resolving, you know, trying to find out exactly where I'm going, you know, my direction with music. But being Latin, my main thing has always been pop rock. I'm trying to incorporate certain tropical sounds or urban sound into it. But you know, the most important thing for an artist, what we were discussing, is to be, you know, true to himself. You know, and you know, it doesn't matter what you do out there. It doesn't matter what kind of music you put out there. As long as you're true to yourself, you're always gonna find, if you market it well, you know, and if you have the right tools, you know, you're always going to find your audience. You know, you're always going to find that audience. Obviously, again, there is a certain type of formula that you can hear in the radio, you can hear in certain, and I like that. It's not that I dislike that formula. I like pop music, you know, so that's a plus for me. You know, I'm into pop. I'm into the 4/4 format. You know, verse, chorus format. You know, and a little instrumental there in the middle. That's my format because I like it. I grew on it, so I'm bringing that to the forefront. It's kind of like pop, and you know, it's radio friendly. But at the same time, you know, again, I have a certain edge that I want to bring into it again, and that's where I'm at right now. I'm incorporating certain things and mutating my sound, not to fit a certain scheme, but more to, like, you know, to be who I am, you know, 100%, you know.
And now we're going to check out Ray Acevedo with Addictive Love.
Cut from a page of a magazine, with haunting eyes, he likes the city streets. Part of the matter, my mind begins to shatter, and her eyes are like a spell that takes control. Addictive love, running to my knees, but I wanna be in her arms forever. Love, addictive love, just come away and see. Oh, run away with me where I wanna be, in your arms forever. Grace in life and see. This grace in life and see. This grace in life and see. Crucé el mar hasta New Orleans. Su aliento es un delirio dentro de mí. Me desespera, despierto en la vereda, sin ropa, sin cartera y sin control. Duele tu amor, arde la ciudad, arde el corazón y arden las calles bien. Adicto a ti, vamos a escapar los dos. Hoy quiero más de ti, correr los dos, cruzar el horizonte. Salvó mi pobre corazón, mi pobre corazón, mi pobre corazón, oh, no, mi pobre corazón.